I know it's hard to take time out of your day. Everybody's working and busy, and just like we're doing now. So thanks for taking the time. As I said earlier, to me this is very crucial, right? People need to know who they're voting for. They need to hear from them. If you've got a question, you should hear directly from the candidate, so that when you make that vote, it's an informed vote. You know, so many times anymore we vote for a party, we vote for our cousin, we vote for fill in the blank just cause. You know, I think it's important. That's what's happened. You either know who you're voting for and be excited about it, be excited about the change or what they are offering, or don't vote, I guess. I mean, I hate to say don't vote, but be an educated voter before you go vote is my point. So I guess with that, I mean, if y'all want to hear something from me, great, or we can open it up to questions. What's best, y'all? Most of y'all, I think, kind of know my story. I mean, obviously my family came here a little over 15 years ago. We owned Henry's Barbecue. Had a great time, very successful at it. We appreciate the town for all the support we had for so long. I know some people think we closed it just because of COVID, which isn't accurate. COVID was a factor in it, obviously, towards the end, but we were trying to get out of the restaurant business for a while. We had a couple different contracts on it through time. My family's transitioned into a whole different business model, which we build houses. I sell real estate. My wife has a marketing company. As y'all see, the old Henry's Facebook, some of y'all might follow it. She's pretty good at marketing. So a couple of companies hired her, and we jumped off in that too. It was just becoming really hard. Obviously, my daughter graduated last year from Artesia, moved to Waco now. She's a Baylor Bear. So with all those changes, we kind of wanted to make sure we had time to, if we wanted to go see my daughter or anything else. Anyone that's been in the food industry or any kind of service industry understands the pull it takes. So we've been working on that for a while. We made that transition. Luckily, the building has sold recently, so hopefully it took 5 contracts to do it, but we did get it done. And hopefully the new owners are excited. We know what they're going to do. I think y'all will be excited about it. And, we'll keep that moving. So that's a little brief synopsis, but I'm sure y'all have questions. Hopefully y'all showed up with a bunch of them. Hopefully they're hard hitters. We'll see. So I guess I'll open it up, or if y'all want me to keep talking, I can do that. Yes, ma'am?
I'm Debbie Brazos. I'm Chief Hope's Admin Assistant at the Fire Department. And of course, I feel very strongly about our critical services, our first responders and whatnot. And we all know, I'm sure what everybody else knows, question on how to keep our guys with appropriate pay. How would you?
Yeah, well, you know, and that's something, if anyone's been following us at all, that's something that we're hitting on pretty hard, because I 100% agree. You know, y'all have probably heard the story before, but I'll say it over and over. The county was in the same boat, right? About 3.5 years. Now, we don't have paid fire department necessarily. We've got some paid positions within the fire department, but we don't. But we have sheriff's department, which we have. So at that same time, we were about 11 to 12 officers down. This is about 3.5, 4 years ago. If y'all remember 285, you were having 1 to 2 deaths a week out on 285. We couldn't get state police to come down here and help us on 285, which is technically a state highway. It's technically their place to patrol, but it's also the sheriff's spot. So we had choices. We either continue to let our services slip, because being that far down, we didn't have anybody we could dedicate to 285. We had a lot of decisions to be made. We had some patrol decisions we had to make at the time, because the county's big. If you haven't noticed, it's a really big county, and the sheriffs are all over the place. So we were in that discussion, and I can remember, you know, the day that an elected official from the city came to me and said, "Hey, if you do this, you're going to be chasing salaries the rest of your lives. You will never make it permanent. You'll never make it to where your department's full," and all that good stuff. Here we are 3.5 years later. We made the decision. We bumped the pay. Now, we're not, and I think that's what people need to understand. If you look at Carlsbad Police Department and the Sheriff's Department, they still pay more than us, but our benefits make up for some of that pay. So all of a sudden, nobody, in 4 years, we have not seen a pay chase. Everybody stayed pretty consistent. Artesia's the only one that stayed down here. Everyone else came up here and stayed consistent. Everyone's department's full except ours. Hobbs is full. Lee County is full. Roswell, last I heard, was full. And Carlsbad's full. Everybody's full except Artesia. And they're the only ones that opted to stay down here. And I think that's unfortunate. I think that should have changed. And I thought maybe it was just that one individual that had that storyline, but it wasn't. I've heard it from council members that have been on for quite some time that should know, and they didn't. So unfortunately, that decision was made. And I think the problem is, and I want folks to understand, if we pull this off and get in there, this isn't a problem that can be fixed day one. We can stop I hate to say stop the bleeding because we're talking about emergency services, right? So it sounds wrong. We can stop that problem as far as we can start looking to get the pay right. We can start looking to see what we need to do. But y'all need to understand why, when some people say, well, other city jobs are just as important, and I'm not arguing that. All city jobs are important. So don't misunderstand what I'm saying. But what you need to understand is, how long does it take to become a fire department? 6 months? On average, it probably, if you're not fully ready to go, it probably takes 6 to 8 months to become a firefighter. So we're talking years to fix the problem. It's not an overnight fix. But we've got to start fixing the problem today before we let it continue to go. As of right now, my understanding is if there's more than 2 fires in town, there's a good chance if we don't have the volunteers back them up, they're going to have to make a decision. Now, that's not on every day, every fire, but there are days that does happen. We've got to be able to support ourselves. We've got to make sure those men and women are paid. And I've said it time, and it got me in trouble in the county, and that's okay, I'll say it here. The day that another department's life is on the line when they walk out the door is the day that I'll worry that those are equals. They're not equals. It's very different, the two ways that you look at that. These folks put their lives on the line, number one. And number two, the skills that they have to attain to become that job are totally different. So you can't put them on the equal field. They're completely separate issues that have to be addressed. Is that close to what you're looking for, hopefully, or at least an answer?
Thank you.
Sure. Yes, ma'am. Either way, whoever wants to go.
Okay, I was just gonna say, we've noticed when we say John Henry's running for mayor candidate, the answer almost always is, doesn't he live in Texas?
Right.
So help us, like, I know Tanya and your son did, and I don't think anyone faults that, but there is a perception that you don't live in Artesia, I think because of the closing of Henry's.
Sure.
So help us with that.
You know, the one thing I'd say, and we've put some videos out to try to help address that. It's hard. Social media has been hard to get it out. We've got a big article coming out, I think that'll help address it. But I never left. And I think anybody that kind of followed what we did, I stayed here. And how can you see that? Well, I stayed engaged in the fight. The entire time the city was quiet during COVID, we were pretty active in the county. I've been a county commissioner. I never left. I didn't miss meetings. You know, we were here engaged. I work here. It's my job. I mean, you can call over and ask what my schedule is, and I'm there all the time. So it is hard to address, or that it was a perception. I think mainly because of the closing of Henry's, they thought, oh, well, you abandoned us. Well, no, that was a business decision that was in the works before COVID. You know, unfortunately, COVID might have sped it up a little bit, but we were supposed to close on that building within about 2 weeks of us closing. We were going to have it sold, and we had a lot of stuff coming in that we had to upgrade the credit card system, things like that, which would have been about 10 grand. We weren't going to make that up in the 10 days we were going to be open. So we opted to close it at that. But no, as far as where do I live, I've always lived in Artesia. I've never left Artesia. I've stayed in the fight here the entire time. You know, some folks say, oh, well, your son is in Lubbock. And he is. My son's in Lubbock. I'll admit that. And that's where he needs to be. And why? And I try to do this without getting upset, right? Because it gets emotional sometimes for me because we know what our kids went through. Many of us that have kids, we saw what they went through in the last year that the schools, and I'm not saying Artesia schools are bad. That's another thing people like to throw at me. Oh, well, John thinks Artesia schools are bad. That's why he's not bringing it back. I think New Mexico school system's a joke, and I think that's why you're going to see, if you look at the county agenda, we're supporting what the school just did by trying to eliminate the PED. There's a lot of problems in the state. We're the bottom of everything. When we made that choice to move, someone said, well, you need to make it more about your son and show. This election is not about my son. It's about me. It's about my son coming back, I hope, someday. It's about your kids coming back someday. And if we don't start moving that needle now, they're not going to come back. We need to become realistic with that. What makes Artesia so incredible? I think it's because, And I told someone, like, when you go to a basketball game, look around the gym. You got this family with their grandmas, the parents, the grandkids, they're all there. And they're everywhere. I don't have that. When I moved here, I want that. I want a city that I can settle down in for a change. And I can sit there and my son moves. My daughter probably won't move back. She's a constitutional lawyer. I don't want her to be Attorney General of New Mexico because this state's a train wreck. We need her, but I don't want her to deal with the democratic politics we're dealing with now. So she probably is not coming back. But my son might. And I want what y'all have. So many of y'all already have that. I don't have it. I've never had it. I want that. I want my son to move back after high school because he made that choice. He came to me. He fought the whole thing. I don't want to go. I don't want to go. We got him in a small school down there. There's about 150 kids. And he's different. He was a good kid before, and I hate people thinking he wasn't. He was an incredible kid. He's completely different. And we're so proud of him. And when he came to me this summer and said, Dad, I really want to stay. I've made great friends. It's a cool school. They go on mission trips. Their football team made it all the way to state. I mean, he's plugged in and doing incredible. And if that means I can't be mayor, I'm okay with that. I fully understand that. I'm not going to continue to punish him because the state already did it enough. I think we need to remember who we're mad at. The governor shut the schools down. The governor shut the businesses down. I didn't. But we made sure that our son was successful.
Well, and I want to point out, I left the state with my family last year. We didn't come back for over a year.
Right. And there's a lot of families, unfortunately, that are still making that decision. We think, oh, we're open and everything's safe. No, go talk to people. There's a lot of people making the same decisions right now because they're really frustrated with how this state has handled it. So I've never left Artesia. I love Artesia. And I stayed in the fight the entire time. When a lot of people around here, I'm sorry, they didn't engage in the fight at all. So.
How many days a week are you actually in Artesia?
It varies on the week, but typically I'm here 5 days, 4 to 5 days a week. So, we went down, I've got other business interests going on all over, so I did go Saturday night to check on those and came back. So, I'm in Artesia probably as much as anyone else is in Artesia, especially if you go to Lubbock on the weekend. I'll probably see quite y'all there too, so it's unfortunate where we go. But no, I'm here the bulk of the week. What else? Sir.
So I've seen you a question about this earlier this week.
Mm-hmm.
And this isn't just, a lot of you guys know me from the fire department, this isn't just from the fire department side, this is citywide. We typically have a lot of employees that come out of high school go to work for the city in many faucets. And one of those things that I would like to see is bringing back the tuition assistance program that we once had. I know that for economic reasons, it was dropped, but those guys come out of high school, or those kids come out of high school, there should be a way for them to obtain even a skilled trade diploma that shows something for them that says, hey, the city's investing in you, you're investing in the city. They take a little bit more pride in their job. And not only that, but it gives us a pride in our employees. Gives them an avenue to continue their education. It may not be a college degree, but it may be a trade skill that we can benefit from, or they can benefit from. And it shows that there's still, a lot of times they're told that you're not going to be college material. But yeah, if we can say, hey, yes you are, we empower them a little bit more. What's your plan for that?
I don't really have a plan for as far as college assistance. I think that's definitely a package to look at. I mean, there's lots of things to look at too. Employee retention is obviously huge, right? Employees cost a lot of money. Every time you got to rehire an employee, it's thousands of dollars. Whereas if you keep an employee, you save a lot of money. So whatever programs, if there are some, if they're affordable, whatever we can do, I mean, anything we can do to retain. And I think trade schools are great. I think there's a lot of we push colleges so much, and not everybody's college material. There's a lot of folks that need to go to a good trade school, and they do really well at the end of it, and we do well. Those are all trades that need it, plumbers, electricians. It's a lot of really cool stuff you can go get, and the city needs it. So the city needs those trades. So I don't have an exact answer. Can we do it? I don't know. But anything that can retain employees that we could look at that are possibilities, there's lots of possibilities.
Just thinking about it, like on the
Sure.
fire side, we send these guys that get their fire certs. Those are all transferable to college credits. And some of those guys, if they would just do the core requirements, could be bachelor's, if not associates, if not bachelor's degree certified by the time they're done with their first 2 years of employment.
Yeah.
You know, and it's not much more. It's just saying, hey, why don't you do the math and the English portion, or a couple little science classes here. Every college still has their small requirements of, hey, we need 30 credits from you to finish.
Right.
Well, if we're certifying them, they're getting their National Fire Association certificate or their certificate in another area, even with their EMS degree. I took advantage of, I had college background before coming to the city, and when I finished the paramedic program, I qualified for the associate's degree in emergency management. So I went ahead and took that opportunity to finish that off. And that's another thing there. And that's something that these guys that are starting out, or these young ladies that are starting out, that eventually they're going to have kids that are going to say, hey, look, yeah, I got a piece of paper. And the city invested in me, and they took that responsibility. That was another thing of, hey, the pay scale may be a little different,
Yeah.
but they're paying for it in another area.
Yeah. Well, and that was part of, like those county benefits. I mean, there's other things to shore up some things that help out. But.
And they lost a lot of good people when they canceled that program. I'm a former city employee, and it was during the period when we had pay cuts. At times were tough, but I know it did cost them some good people.
Right. Yeah. Well, and it's hard once you've made that commitment.
Yeah.
We were talking about football earlier. I mean, I'm a loyalty guy. If I make that commitment, I'm loyal to that commitment. So, yeah, I can understand how some folks could see it that way and leave. What else? Yes, ma'am.
Mayor Miller spoke last week at the city council meeting about the BLM approaching the city to partner
Mhm.
for a shooting range potentially at Cartwright Road.
Mhm.
I was curious to see if you saw any other potential outdoor recreation opportunities to partner or to have the city be a part of in that, because I feel Artesia really lacks in that department, and that's a huge area, in other cities, in other communities where those are very valued.
Right. Yeah.
How would do you see that as well? Do you see the possibility of those partnerships down the road?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of ways to partner. I also think that the city needs to start standing up on their own 2 feet, right? Because in that same meeting, some of y'all weren't there, but the first thing is, well, maybe the county can do it because we have the money, right? And I'll admit, county does really well. Obviously, that's where most oil is. They do well, but I think what I'd like to see is the city start having a vision and a plan for some of that stuff. During this campaign, a couple of the things that have been approached on is, and I didn't know it was a big deal. We've done it once. It was fun. Frisbee golf, right? Apparently, there's like a massive group that does this, and they bring things in. And I noticed we sort of had Frisbee golf in the MLK. There was one cage that I saw. I don't know how many we have, but there's some simple things this is kind of low-hanging fruit that should be super simple to fix. And we shouldn't be waiting just for partners to come along. The city needs to start having a plan on COVID would have been, if we had that already in place during this whole COVID thing, that would have been the best time to have it, right? We would have had things to do. We could have been outside, which our governor said was sort of safe, right? Which I think is a joke. I mean, you're outside, but whatever. There's a lot of cool stuff we could do. And I think it's time. I think a lot of folks want to be active. I know the pool's an indoor thing, but when I go to the pool at nights to swim, there's a lot of families in there. They're just looking for stuff to do, and we have a lot of opportunity. We had the splash pad at one time. It was a really minor fix to fix it. Well, we didn't. Now it's a little bit bigger of a fix, and now we're not even going to fix it, right? And that's an outdoor activity we already had in place, and we're not going to utilize. Go to MLK. I'm going to just stick there for a second. Our sand volleyball courts have grass growing in them. Why? Our basketball court there, the nets are broken. Why? I mean, I reported it in July. I got in trouble by a council member. They said, well, don't report on Facebook. Okay, well, I didn't like the way it looked and I wanted to make a point. And here we are, what would that be? 6 months later or so? Still broken. The tent is still ripped. I mean, there's a lot of things. Why are we not making these things a priority? Because I think people are really, really wanting, an outdoor running path would be, I love to run. That's my thing. It's really difficult to run in Artesia. If you're not a runner and you want to put in serious miles, it's really hard. How can we do that? I've been to Lovington. I stopped there 2 weeks ago just to go look at they don't call it rec center, they call it wellness center, which I thought was interesting. They've partnered with the hospital to make it a wellness center. Now they have a pool in it and some other things, but they had some really neat ideas. There's an indoor running track. So maybe if it is raining, cold, windy, that's when I don't run because I'm a fair weather runner, right? I'm not that into running. But that'd be a nice place. I'd love to go there on a cold day or cold morning and get my run in. And there's a ton of cool options to really get recreation going. And we need it. It's not just for the kids, it's for the wellness of the community. And if you hadn't played Frisbee golf, it really kind of is fun. It's hard.
Hi, just had a question. Maybe there's not a right or wrong answer, but what your thoughts on the city manager would be. So, sounds like you've got a pretty full-time job here in Artesia. So, how do you stay engaged 100% of the time to make sure that we're dialed in on all the things that we say we want to do? Mm-hmm. How do you do that? Does the city manager help? Is that something? How does that
You know, the city manager thing, I'll tackle your question in two parts, right? How do I stay engaged with a full-time job? And I think this is the best season of my life that I've been in to be able to tackle this job because I can control my schedule very well. As a real estate agent, you can control what you can do. But I also think we have department heads in place for a reason. We have city councilors that should be more engaged, right? We should allow the city council to do what they were elected to do, and that's represent. I've talked to, not Ray Miller, but a prior mayors that said, hey, we were probably too engaged. We were a little too hands-on. And I think that's probably right. I've talked to a lot of department heads. They're there for a reason. You know, we've put the trust in them to say, hey, go run your rec department. Here's how to do it. Here's, you know, if there's got to be some kind of guidelines that the city has to follow, fine. But let them do it. That stuff shouldn't be coming to council meetings, every single meeting that, hey, so-and-so wants to play in the park on Friday. Okay, why do I care? That's not a thing for me. I want those to happen. Just make them happen quicker and easier and more efficient. So on that aspect, I do think you can be a mayor and not have to be there every single day because I don't think you should be. You need to be out in the public. I think it's more important for the mayor to be walking up and down the street, talking to small businesses, talking to folks, and finding out what really needs. Now, as far as the city manager goes, I'm not totally against, most smaller cities than us have a city manager. The problem with city manager, county learned that lesson, you get the wrong county manager, it's a train wreck. I won't mention his name, but our prior county manager was a train wreck. Whereas our current county manager, Al Davis, has been incredible. Anybody that has dealings with him knows he's moving the county in the right direction from our leadership, from the commission leadership down, and we have a direction. So it is a good question. I think it's something to explore because I think it does bring stability to your city. You could change mayors every 4 years. You could change a dynamic of your council every 2 years. That does bring some stability to where department heads have a constant. I've heard that it costs up to $150,000. That's not always accurate. You know, the counties cost about $150,000, but the counties obviously, our budget's $124 million. I think the city budget, according to some of the counselors, was 10. So there's a little bit of a difference in money on what's going on and how it is. There's a lot of activities in a city, and there's a lot of, I really think it could help bring some stability and some accountability to the city. And I think the city's kind of lacking on some accountability.
Okay, thank you.
Sure, no problem.
Well, I know you touched on it about, I mean, everybody complains about the restaurants and everything else, and the reality is they're closed for a reason, and a lot of it has to do with staffing and employees, and there's only so much you can do when you don't have the workforce.
Yeah.
I think that that kind of flows into another part, is we don't see the economic growth in this town that we used to. We see a lot of buildings emptying, we see a lot of buildings closing, we see as generations age up, we see businesses either close, sell out, have to divide up. There's so much going on here to build the bottom infrastructure, to bring in more restaurants, to bring in more what you would consider kind of start out careers, you have to have the upper part too. So hand in hand, developing this town. I think it plays into bringing revenue into our towns. It plays into bringing education levels up in our town because we bring in upper level management and people who bring in a different perspective and they bring in a different drive of the communities that I think has kind of shifted. We've had a lot of shifts in this town. So do you have an idea of, I mean, how do you kind of attract kind of more bigger companies or the growth?
You know, I really think that there's a couple of really good examples around the state that have done this well, and I can't remember if it's Deming or TRC, but I read of a project, it's been a couple years ago. So Deming, which has no money, if y'all don't know Deming, I mean, that county is a very poor county. They don't have a lot of things going on over there. So what Deming did is something I thought was brilliant. They built the city built a complex. It has like 4 or 5 buildings in it. They help young entrepreneurs, people from the city can rent there cheap, almost like a teacherage is. Think of it like that would be a good example for here. They let young entrepreneurs come in there. They have to have a business plan, I mean, there's a ton of stuff. So we're helping these folks get their businesses started, and we start creating from within. You know, I think a lot of times we try to jump outside of the city limits. When I've talked to a ton of people within the city that have great ideas, they just have no idea how to get them started. So before I go jump too far, I mean, we obviously want big companies in because that makes your economy stable. And we would look for a stable economy a little more. Hobbs done a brilliant job of it. So we want that stability, but I also think we really need to focus within too. I mean, with the amount of folks that have approached me, and that's just one example. I mean, we could have help. I don't know. I volunteer in the chamber because they get volunteer for everything. But whatever that department is, maybe we have a day where we set it up to where if you are a young entrepreneur, bring your business plans. We've set up somebody that understands how to do that, to meet with you, and you have a chance to run through your business plan, and they can. There's a ton of ideas that I think we could really make run. You know, I know some folks have said, well, we need another committee. I'm sorry, I sat on an economic committee for 8 years. 8 years. And that's what changed. Nothing, right? Nothing really from that committee. Committees, I'm not always a huge fan of committees. I think we can really get some other things accomplished by putting things in action and letting the town come to it. Now, as far as attracting anything bigger, we have to address the problem, and I've said it a number of times, of housing. I mean, we've got to have employees, we've got to have places for them to live, we've got to have affordable housing. And people say, well, everything that's building is so expensive, and they're right. I build houses. I understand it's expensive right now, especially lumber just went up another 10% last week. So yeah, we're taking a hit. But there's incentive programs, you know, and we had 6 to 8 years ago, we had the guy that wrote the anti-donation bill that is in the state of New Mexico. It's a state statute, anti-donation. We had him sitting in the safety complex and met with city councilors at the time and some others. And he says, y'all are looking at this wrong. You can do this, this, and this. And the city said, no, that's anti-donation. No, I wrote the bill. This, and this. No, that's still wrong. We've got to get out of our own way. We've got to quit looking at everything anti-donation and no. We've got to figure, how do we help developers develop? How do we help builders build? Because then maybe we can bring some costs down. And as new things get built, what do? We leave other things behind. Sometimes people are moving up, some people are moving down, but you start creating a housing market, which we don't have a great housing market now. I mean, our housing market's tight. I sell it. So you got a really good, nice house that's gone in a heartbeat. Because there's so many people trying to move around. There's so many people we can move here from Roswell. But we've got to have houses, we've got to have employees, we've got to have some sort of that kind of economy before big guys really want to move in. Because if you're a big company and you're looking at our labor market, you're probably a little worried. And I would be.
Well, our town was built on entrepreneurs.
Yeah, and that's
The
it.
big companies did not start as big companies.
Yeah. No, and I think that's it. Artesia has an entrepreneur. And that's why I really think whatever ideas we can to make within entrepreneurs, look at all the assets we have around us. Now, I'm not going to open this, so I'm going to pitch it. And whoever wants to open it, I think it's a brilliant idea because it's mine. But y'all know the pistachio farm thing in Tularosa, that's between Tularosa and Alamo? When I was a little kid, that thing was barely getting kicked off. They sat in front of my dad's restaurant to sell the pistachios. It was really hard to get them started. But now look at it. I mean, Ozzy Osbourne stopped there in his little videos, and now it's a destination of all these Ozzy Osbourne fans. I'm not an Ozzy Osbourne person, but I do know he stopped there, and it's a big deal. Look around us and look at pecans. Why do we not have a pecan stop? Why could we not partner with, look at the assets we have around here that you could shore up. You can have a pecan stop that sells pecan pies, pecan wine, pecan coffee, which is a huge thing in Texas at the moment. I mean, there's a lot of things like that. You just look around and say, how do we take this asset that we already have, what could we partner with it and make it stronger? And whom in town can we get to do it? Because I think if we help people within be successful, you make your town more successful. And that would be the goal. Got to have a lot of other stuff filtered in, but I really want to focus economy. What could we grow from within? Did that answer your questions, hopefully? Sometimes I get chasing rabbits. Yes, sir.
John, it's been my observation that it really got triggered by the problem of the library, even though the governor, the world famous governor, had decreed it was okay to open libraries during COVID. The city council, and they've got 3 candidates running for mayor who sat on that city council, turned it all over to the mayor, and it never happened. And they had, you know, when you talk about trying to get people to participate coming from the community, 3 different council meetings, there were the moms, the library moms that showed up. I remember one of them just saying, I just want my child to touch a book, but nothing happened. And obviously, those city councilmen, they had an opportunity to do something. I think they could have got a couple of votes, or maybe one of them here that would have helped, but no, they didn't. And it only would take 5 votes to override the mayor, is that correct?
Yeah.
Can I do the numbers right? And nothing happened. And so there wasn't any leadership exercised by those 3 people. I've seen the same thing that happened on the school board, just sitting there with no leadership. One of them is now running for mayor. And so can you tell us what you, John Henry, have done with respect to your, say, public service, that you've exercised leadership, have you?
Absolutely.
To me, this is what this election is about. So would you tell us about that?
Again, here's a rabbit, right? But I think it's all going to come back to the center. So when I was first elected to the commission, I was known as the 4-1 guy, right? So if y'all didn't know me, I was 4-1. I lost almost every single vote, 4-1. But every single time I cast my vote, I was vocal and I fought hard. And I'll be really honest, after that first 2 years, I thought, man, I don't know that I should even be doing this because I'm not serving my constituents at all. I'm losing every single time. But then another candidate came alongside and said, hey, we see what you're doing. We think you're on the right path. You're taking Eddy County on the right path. We're going to run for election. And they beat the incumbent. Second guy came to me, and this is no lie. Go ask him. The second guy came to me and said, we see what you're doing. We see that you're vocal. And we see that they're making bad decisions. We're going to come alongside you and help. So by being vocal, being passionate, and making sure that your voice was heard, we had 2 great candidates come alongside. Now we've completely changed that board because I was vocal. You cannot sit as a leader and be an elected official and not be vocal. I lost, if you remember, the GRT vote. I lost that vote 4-1. It was going to raise Artesia's GRT to almost as high as Santa Fe. What did I do that day? I came back. I was furious at the vote, and I knew it. I came here, and Mayor Birch is the only one that came alongside me from the city, and we fought to reform that. And it got on a vote, and y'all voted against it, which is what should have happened. So those are the type of things I expect from an elected leader. You know, going to the example of the library, also during that same time frame, they had Little League was started, and I forgot what the mandate was she changed. You might remember, I don't remember, but all of a sudden the mayor said, well, we're going to, and I'm not trying to hit on certain folks, but they made a decision, okay, Little League's going to have to drastically be pulled back. And I got from one of the new city council members, I got a call and say, hey, John, does this seem right? And I said, well, no, it doesn't really seem right because we have great examples in town. Did y'all call Coach Henderson? Well, why would we do that? Well, he's running sports right now. The high school is playing baseball. The high school, unfortunately, was playing everything at once because our governor thought that was a cool idea. So all these kids had to play at once. What are they doing? Oh, well, let's do that. Still, they wouldn't make that change. He tried to fight for that change. took Representative Townsend, a number of us to even make that change. The answer too often is no, and as leaders, you can't say no. No cannot be an answer, and I know one of my other candidates is finally saying that. No can never be your answer. It's always an opportunity. No, but here's how we can do it. That's what y'all are coming to us for. You're not coming to us to say, no, 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 right? That's a pretty simple answer, we move on. No, but let's try it this way. No, can we do it this way? No, there's always a opportunity to fix so many of these things. The library should have been open. We saw the example all over the state. Why was ours not? I have no idea. Also on the commission, if you look during that whole COVID time, the one thing, did we get anything changed? No. She did what she wanted to. We all saw that. We have a governor that's out of control because we gave her all the control. And I'd say the same thing here. If we give one person control, we've lost the system. I love our political system because it should have balance. There should be voices in it. As a city council member, you have a voice to represent your district. There should be voices there. So giving it all to one person, I have a real issue with. Would Artesia have opened quicker? Probably not. Could we have got the schools open quicker? Probably not. But Artesia was looked at as a leader. People expected us to lead. And when we were getting that call, they said, what is Artesia doing? Nothing. So what did that do to some of these other folks? It took Floyd to take a stand. Do y'all know where Floyd is? I mean,
How many people had to Google it to figure that out?
yeah, it's a tiny little dot. It took Floyd to stand up to these folks. That's what I think people expected, and that's what they expected from Artesia. And I think as leaders, we should have stood up. I think Eddy County fought hard. I can remember, and my daughter was one of them, and I was emotional. I don't know why I get emotional sometimes, but I'm not an emotional person. If I get elected, I'm not a crybaby, just understand. But my daughter was there presenting to us that she was part of the group that did the rally here at the parking lot to open schools up and take masks off and all that. And there was 4 of them that showed up to the commission. And I wanted them to understand what y'all are doing here today is so critically important. Your voices are being heard. And as a commissioner, we collected a ton of letters. So when we sent our resolution to the desk, the governor didn't see a resolution from Eddy County. She saw a resolution from Eddy County with about, I think we sent 250 letters. There was 250 other voices from kids, parents, and teachers that she had to look at it and ignore, which she did. But they were all there. And I told that group of girls, it's so important, and I want y'all to understand, we might not win, but you were heard. And that's what our kids should have heard this last 2 years. There's so many of the last 2 graduating classes I'm afraid we don't get back because I don't think very many of them thought we fought for them. I don't think very many of them thought they were heard. And I think a lot of them are going to take their talents somewhere else. And that's a huge hit to this town. We need those kids to come back. That's what makes us great. That's what's always made us great. They should have heard from our city leadership. They should have heard more from some of the school leadership that, hey, your voices are heard. It's important to us, and we're fighting for you. We might not win, but we're 100% fighting for you.
And they did speak up. We did speak up. Community did.
Yes.
I went to city council, and every time from city council or the school board, it was our hands are tied, there's nothing we can do.
Yeah.
So you had a large part of the community that was angry, they were upset, they wanted to be involved, they wanted to be a part of solutions, they were shut down, they were told there's nothing we can do. There are things that can be done. And so there's grassroots movements to get things going, but when you don't see that, our kids see that. They see the hypocritical state of the teachers, the admin at the school. Like, to think we've lost 2 grades? No, it's been 4. Every one of those high schoolers, it's difficult to talk to them. If you guys haven't spoken to some of the high schoolers now that have gone through this, it's changed these kids.
Yeah.
It's changed the younger kids too, but the high schoolers, like, they feel it's pointless. Like, going to school is pointless. How many dropouts? Like, I mean, they just felt so behind, like, how do we even catch up?
Yeah.
Like, it's really shaped them. It's not just 2, and it's why parents left, but people did speak up. But when you speak up and you get told there's nothing we can do, and you're just looked at as a total irritant, like, I know they hated when I came into the meeting. They're like, oh, this woman won't go away, and they still feel that way. But I'm not gonna.
Good for you.
I don't either. I'm not gonna stop speaking up, and that's something as a community, we have to keep talking. If we can't bring our grievances to the school board or to the election, to the county commission, to the city, like, you guys are elected by us. And it was like, that was forgotten, that we had a voice, it was just an irritated voice. I didn't always have an answer of like what I wanted them to do either, but just to be always dismissed with, there's nothing we can do, it was discouraging. There's a gap now between trust and connection of those in leadership and the community. That's gonna have to be bridged back, not just with the kids, but with parents. And, you know, I feel like there's a lot of families that are right on the edge of stepping out of Artesia and never coming back.
No, I've talked to them. I mean, that's what I said. They really are. They're still out there. We act like this crisis is over for Artesia. It's not.
Our
It's
kids
not.
are still masked in school.
And our kids are still upset. And, you know, I put a post out the other day, and when I did it, it came back to me with all the anger that y'all probably still have as well, that if I would have known my daughter's sophomore year, watching her run at the state track meet was the last time I'd ever get to watch her run, I would have taken a couple extra pictures. And it really makes me mad that that was taken away from not only me, but her. She loved it. She never got to run again. You know, we got to play football, did we? Come on. That was a joke. We did not play football that year. We got to play a couple games to make up for it. All that was taken away, not just from the kids. And I think we've got to remember that. It wasn't just them that suffered. We suffered too. A lot of folks, a lot of times the game is where they go to have community. That was taken away. Everything was taken away, and we shouldn't have been okay with it. And I know there was a big group. When I'm talking, I think city leadership, I really, like I said, would their voice have changed a ton? No, but I think it would have helped. One day we went to a meeting, and one of the elected officials said, I think your wife hates me. I said, well, I think she hates all of us right now. And she did. She wanted more. She was struggling. We were struggling to try to keep it going. We were dealing with all the mandates. We popped one positive. You'd shut the business down for the day. That's about a $10,000 hit immediately because I lose all the food that's there, and it's a $10,000 hit to replace it. That's $20,000 for me to reopen my business. I was successful, and we were doing good. We weren't doing that good. No business, small business, can take a $20,000 hit. I met in this room a number of times with restaurant people trying to figure out how do we survive. And I know one of them depleted her entire savings just to try to keep her building open. She wanted somebody to listen and fight. It might not have changed a doggone thing, but it sure would have helped them to know we're not in it alone, and that was what was important. So, yes, ma'am.
I heard from my councilman that he actually came to our door, that the reason our mayor, our president mayor, and the president council didn't do anything was because we were involved with some kind of a lawsuit with the state. Can you address that?
No, I have no idea. I mean, the commission, we're involved in all kinds of lawsuits too, but it didn't affect our. I don't.
That's what I was told, that the mayor is a great businessman and so on, but that he just could not do anything. His hands were tied because the city of Artesia was involved in a lawsuit with the state. Does anybody know that?
There's a couple lawsuits that we were involved in, but being active wouldn't have affected. And I can't speak for the city. I'm not in their executive sessions, and they can't speak either. I mean, most
It
lawsuits
seemed
aren't
like I was
bad.
hearing an excuse, and that's what
I kind of
you
feel-
heard it, but I would like to be informed. That's
Yeah,
why.
I kind of would think that was kind of, because what I heard a lot is, well, if we're quiet, they might make sure we're taken care of with money. And my response to that, again, is an angry response, because what did we lose to get that extra $1 million? Was that $1 million worth the businesses we lost? Was it worth the families we lost? Was it worth the trust we lost? What do we have to make up for that $1 million? Because $1 million seems like a whole lot to us, right? If I had $1 million, I'd be like, sweet, that's $1 million. To governments, it's not as big as you think. When you've lost so much, you probably lose more than $1 million when you start losing those businesses. So when I heard it was about money, that was something that just doesn't set well with me.
Okay, well, the lawsuit, I'm a former city employee, and I know the city did have an ongoing lawsuit for several years over, it was a gross receipts issue that several small communities in New Mexico were up against. They felt that they had gross receipts unfairly withheld by the state, and they questioned the state, and it went back and forth for several years. It's possible that would be the one they were referring to. because I know I did hear it a lot as a former supervisor during budget time. That was the excuse for funding. I wanted to go back to what Peyton was mentioning about leadership and just comment. We talked earlier about our parks looking bad. The city has no parks department anymore. We talked about, different buildings and facilities being open during the pandemic. There was no consistency. The library had 1 hour, other facilities made their own. There was no leadership. There was no consistency that I could see as a citizen. Everyone just kind of made up their own thing. There was it just seemed like nobody was keeping things consistent. And for me, that, with public safety being so low on employees, why are they not being paid a living wage, a competitive wage? We need leadership, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I'm saying, for me, that's what I'm looking for as a voter. I'm looking for leadership that can get it done.
Well,
Look
and I
at the big
think,
picture.
I think if you look at, some folks said, why'd you get in the race? You're going to split the vote. Why'd you get in the race? You live in Lubbock. Why'd you get in the race? Fill in the blank, right? My wife said, why'd you get in the race?
Have you lost your mind?
Yeah. No, my wife's excited, so that was a joke, please. But that was the one thing, I think when it boiled down to it, after talking to a lot of folks, I'm the only one that's different. The other 4 candidates have been in city leadership for a long time. I know one of them isn't currently a city council, but they were. I'm the only one that's different. I'm the only one that during this last 5 years, I think, showed hopefully some sort of leadership and fight, not just during the pandemic, but over the course of it. The GRT hike was wrong, and we fought it and we won. We corrected our police force 4 years ago when we were having the same problems the city's having now. There's a lot of things that we had to fight for. People say, one of the councilors called me the other day and said, well, your roads are still bad. I'm like, no, really? Are they really that bad? Granted, if you live on a county road, it might not be great right now, but we have a plan. That's the difference. We have a plan. We've actually put a roadmap in place, and we've started attacking it, and we've spent millions of dollars towards that, and we're laser focused on it. We're not wavering, we're not altering. That's our plan, because that's what we're charged with. As elected officials, you got to remember, we're charged, especially in the county, with 2 things. Safety and roads. That's really all we control. We don't have any much more infrastructure, we just have roads. The city's charged with safety and infrastructure. And infrastructure, I'll put in water and everything else, right? Those are the things we're truly charged with. Recreation, all that's a bonus, but we have the money to fix those bonuses. We just won't. We're saving it all. And I look at it as a 2-part thing. I was treasurer of a church here once, and I looked at it that way. That when the church was excited, we've saved a lot. That hurt my feelings. Well, that's not making disciples. That's not what God gave us that money for. He gave it to us to make disciples, right? Well, as a city, if you're saving money, that's not your money. That's my money. That's your money. That's your money. That's our money that we paid in. Sitting on it and saving while we're walking around in thistles. Well, that's one poor lady takes her dog to the park and it's those goat heads, which I really hate, all over her dog. Every single time she goes, I can't even take my dog to the park anymore. I mean, there's simple services that should have been fixed a long time ago and never got here, but we let it get here. And we've got to fix that. We've got to address that. And I think we've got to have a vision. We've got folks in place. If you go to our rec center, go talk to Louis in the rec center. Have any of y'all done that? That dude is a gold mine. 30 years of service. He's forgot more about recreation than any of us will ever know. He's a genius. He sat there and went through programs that he's had in the past that he'd love to bring back. Why are they gone? We don't have money. Well, we couldn't do that anymore. We didn't have money. During the pandemic, they've got a computer lab. Have y'all ever gone and looked at the computer lab at the rec center? Guess how many computers are in there? 0. Not one computer. They wanted to try to open it up during the pandemic because we saw the pictures of the kids trying to get online because a lot of kids didn't have internet. What a great place we could have used as a resource with a computer lab. Not a computer in it, we wouldn't let them in. He had plans. We've got department heads that are gold. They've been here a long time and understand the problem and understand how to fix it. They just need leadership to help them fix it. It's not reinventing the wheel. We've got so much in place that if you just look at the leaders we have here in the departments, I think you can do a lot of incredible things. And he deserves it. If none of y'all have talked to him, go thank him for his service, because my goodness, that's a man that has done more service than a lot of folks do their entire life.
Above and beyond his job, he volunteers to coach almost every sport in every city league, whether it's through that recreation center or not.
And I guarantee you, he could have left a million times for a higher paying job, but he didn't because he loves what he does. Those should be rewarded. Those are the people you fight for to keep, because they're winners. And unfortunately, those are the ones that are stuck trying to make it work, and they stay because they love the kids, and that's a plus.
And John, I've got a comment, and Peyton and I talked about this. We have a lot of projects and things we want to do as a foundation. Our job is to invest in the community, and some counselors are supportive, but there are some that are just, they face us with the no, and I'm gonna give an example. We've got a great partnership with the school, and we'll say, hey, we've got a great idea, what do you think about this? And they say, no, but let's do it in a year or two, but let's plan it out. We don't really have that with the city currently.
Yeah.
We've got a lot of plans, a lot of things for quality of life amenities, that we're willing to really invest in our community. And the city faces us with, we don't have the money. If you wanna do it all, you can, but it's on you. And I want to thank Jared. Jared's one of our city councilors, very supportive in a lot of our current work that we've done. But that's something that we would like to see, is have a real partnership.
Yeah. No, I agree. And again, I'm sorry you're in here, right? Jared's a very new city council member. We've got some new ones. Hopefully we'll change 2 more seats no matter what, because they're open. And you've got to remember, it's got to be a strong council as well. I don't have a vote. I don't know that a lot of people understand that. There's 8 on the council that can vote. Now, if there's a tie, I vote. Otherwise, I don't have a vote.
I'm actually more concerned about the district runs
Yeah.
and getting the new faces in the council that we can actually accomplish quite a few things.
I think the council can accomplish a lot. I think it's really important. I think the mayor brings great vision with the council, and I think that's the switch I'm looking for. Is if I can switch the mayor seat to me, obviously I'm running. We get in there at the mayor seat and we switch those council seats. All of a sudden, you have a possible of 6 new votes, right? 2 from that, possibly a 3 if we change them all, and me. That's 6 new voices on there. That's a lot. It's a big change in 1 year to have on a council. That needs to be a little more aggressive. And I would agree. I think what we lack as a city, and I've said it before, is vision. We don't know where we're going. We don't know what we need. We just kind of, as things come alongside of us, we're excited. Oh, okay, yeah. Oh, okay, yeah, let's do it. But we've got to have a vision and a path and a direction. And we've got to be willing to understand how we're going to pay for it. We've got some major projects in the county that we don't know how to pay for right this second, but we're making a plan to pay for it. Nobody's going to come alongside of us because we're building possibly a jail or something exciting like that. Nobody wants a jail. But there's a lot of cool projects that I think partners like yourself would come alongside and say, hey, that's a cool thing. That's where we're all going. The city's going that way. We've talked to y'all. We've talked to the people. This is where we're headed, and we're excited to go that way. And we've got to get out of the culture of no. We really do. It kills everything.
I'd just like to make a comment. When I worked in the environmental department over at Navajo, I know that it was important for them to have a good relationship with the mayor because of all the and so, you definitely would be representing Artesia and what's best for Artesia. And when you think about Navajo, their headquarters is in Dallas. And, Dallas has no connection to Artesia. And a lot of times, they are now, as they've grown through the years, they are now dictating where and who they purchase their goods from or their services from. And so they can dictate whether or not you've got a local business who's going to shut down. Because I'm going to not go with this business, I'm going to go with this major corporation, And so they don't care in Dallas what's happening in Artesia. And and if I, expand my thought, well, Navajo's not the only corporation, that is, operating here in Artesia, And so I'm just kind of thinking, we want to encourage small business in Artesia. That's good for us. And we're giving them permission to operate here. All these other corporations can there be a negotiation of, hey, I need you to make your purchases in Artesia. I know you're over there counting numbers and trying to reduce your overall cost or whatever decisions they're making, but I need you to buy your products first in Artesia. And you talked about entrepreneurship and, if we've got a small business who needs a little help, maybe they're not, they don't have the skills or that a major corporation is, can there be like a communication, hey, let's help these young, entrepreneurs improve or win your business. Choose small business in Artesia first. I'm just thinking that.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
No, I think your first point was spot on. The mayor has to have a great relationship with Navajo, with FLETC, with a lot of the big companies, right? EOG. There's a lot of big national companies that are here. And it's important to continue that dialogue. When EOG came to town for the first time, I was one of them. Me, Mayor Birch, Haley from the Chamber, and Michael Buck. We got on a plane. We flew to Dallas first. We went and met Navajo's headquarters, talked to them, made sure they realized how important they were to our community, why we loved them, everything else. How can we help you? We drove down the street. Who else is in Dallas? Was it who's the building that's right next to EOG now? Lucid. Right. It was the same time frame. So then we drove down the street. I think Lucid might be in Dallas. Then we got back on the plane, flew to Houston, met with Peyton's son and his company, and then we went and met with EOG, and then we flew home. Then we fly to Washington once a year to make sure we meet with FLETC to remind them. I think it's the mayor's job. I think council members should go on those as well. It's our job to make sure we remind folks how important they are to our community and why. Every time FLETC's in town, I get the call to come meet with them, and all we talk about is, hey, especially when I was at a restaurant, hey, we really appreciate seeing you guys in our restaurant and everything else, and reiterate that time and time again so they hear it, but they know they're appreciated. And I think that's what, even with big companies, they want to know they're appreciated in their town. And goodness, a lot of them partner. Navajo is a huge partner with the town on a lot of things. So we've got to remember that, and we've got to continue to build those bridges and make sure they understand what we offer as a city. Small businesses and everything else, who could we do deals with and everything else. So, I think that's crucially important that every time they're in town, I'm on their safety community outreach deal. I forgot what exactly it's called, and we meet every once in a while, and that's a cool program they do. They do a lot of neat stuff, but the mayor is the face, and the mayor should be in all of those, thanking them and making sure they understand how much we appreciate them. Not just the big boys, but even the big companies here in town that do so much.
Shopping locally.
Yeah, and shop local.
And I want to piggyback on that. I've been told within the next 2 years, they're going to use no local vendors at all, especially for their big projects. And if you look at a Kia or a Hyundai, their suppliers are right there.
Yeah.
Right 2 blocks down. So it's kind of, I don't know if it's a mentality, I think it's a little cronyism going on, but that's going to be a huge hit for us.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to rectify that. I know it's somebody looking at a spreadsheet, but I have $500,000 in inventory that I keep just for them.
Right.
That I have to have. So.
Well, and that's bad for your business. It's bad for our teachers. It's bad for everybody, right? Because when you're not selling things, we're not getting GRT. I mean, it's a snowball effect, and if we're not getting GRT, we can't go fix things. And so, it's really important that we help remind these companies why to pay local. Why can we force them? No. But it's really important that every time they're here, they understand why shopping with you is important. Why going to fill in the blank restaurant's important. I don't want to say one because y'all think I'm favored. I go to them all. They're all great. So, but no, that face-to-face, those constant contacts, those constant discussions, I think, is what you should at least try to do and keep them coming and remembering that how much they love it here. The FLETC guy we had those stupid cookies. I would bring him one every time I'd come meet him, and that's all he wanted. The second he got it was a cookie. And I mean, so simple things like that they remember you. And that's what we need from our teachers. We need those folks to remember.
Make it personal.
Huh?
Make it personal.
Make it personal, yeah.
If it's not personal, it's easier to cut something that you don't have a relationship with.
Yep. No, that's exactly right. That's exactly right.
I wonder, how was the city as far as mandating their employees? Did they require vaccinations and did they require testing?
I don't think
and
the
all that?
city, no, the city and I know the county, I think are on the same page there. At one time, they thought they were gonna force us, but I told them they could remove me from my position. I don't believe in mandating stuff like that. It's wrong. It's your choice.
I remember speaking to that issue of the refinery in local versus Dallas. I remember when the Holly Frontier offices out here, they did a tremendous amount of accounting work, and et cetera, ran the pipelines, and they were ready to shut that whole office down that's out there at the shopping center and move it to Dallas. And Mayor Birch got right in the middle of that. And he said, now wait a minute, as soon as they get to Dallas, what are they gonna do? They're gonna walk down the street and go to work for somebody else. You've got Artesia folks here that don't have all those kind of opportunities, but they darn sure do the work. And he won, and that was the mayor. Yeah, I thought that was fascinating. That there's real advantages to going local. That's a message that needs to be carried.
And that'd be the same
Yeah, that was a
message
smart
for you,
argument.
right? I mean, how much easier is it to walk across the street and get your part instead of ordering it from? Because I see how supply chains work right now. I know Biden says it's great, but the stuff I'm ordering it's not great.
Well,
So-
I like that because, no offense, but it's gonna take more than a cookie. We gotta have leverage.
Yeah.
And that was a creative way of getting leverage on,
Yeah.
to convince them otherwise. But you're gonna have to battle that.
Yeah.
You're saying it, and everybody sees it.
Yeah.
These LOs, they're not from here.
I mean,
And they hand down edicts from above, and they don't care who you are.
I mean, I worked for a major corporation for a long time. I worked for Marriott Hotels, and one of the biggest arguments I constantly had with them is when the VPs would fly in usually from Washington and that side, and my last hotel was in Dallas, and they were real particular on wine. I know this sounds stupid. It's another cookie example, right? I understand we're going to have to fight more than just cookies, but their idea was, well, you've got to have this list of wines. I was the biggest wine sales restaurant in the city of Dallas, and I said they don't sell here. Well, that's what we demand. Well, they don't sell here. Nobody wants those wines here. We're in Texas. Here's what they want. Look at my sale. I mean, I could prove it. And finally, they said, okay, we'll make an exception. So I get it. Corporate America has this idea that they're the rulers, but it's going to take locals fight too. I mean, it's not just the mayor. It's some of the operators here that say, hey, look, we could walk across the street and get the parts. Why do you want me to order them? Because we did the same thing. It was easier for me to go across the street. We had a big, not across the street, but right around the corner. I could go buy whatever I wanted just like that for cheaper, mind you, cheaper. But the Marriott, no, you've got to have 60% of your spend with this company because we get a kickback. At corporate, I didn't get the kickback, corporate did. So those are the kind of things you fight. Those are the kind of things that we have to have help from Navajo, the locals here, helping us say, hey, look, if we go across the street, we can buy it cheaper, quicker, more efficient. So yeah, I mean, you've got battles to come. I know I was just a small time running a hotel, but we made those battles, and I see how they have to work. And I think, to Peyton's example, that's exactly right. I mean, the mayor, the city council, local folks need to get involved in that and make them understand why it's better to keep it local.
And that's where your negotiation master skills are gonna have to come into effect to,
I'll reread Trump's book.
to keep us going.
Yeah.
We are blessed with, my family has been blessed with Navajo, many families, the community. And, we want to, of course, continue that. And then, small business is where it's at. And, we are no longer moving away from, every year moving further and further away. And realistically, small towns, towns all over the U.S. need to start demanding of these corporations that we're no longer going to centralize our purchases from major corporations.
Yeah.
That's where we really need to turn to.
Yeah, because the whole world wants to go corporate.
And
it's
then
dangerous,
they are
dangerous.
able to, at that point, tell us exactly how we're going to live our lives.
Yeah.
And that's where we need this.
COVID may be a blessing in that regard. A lot of people are going, oh,
Yeah.
I can't go across the street and buy that.
Mm-hmm.
Oops.
Yes, ma'am.
How do you plan on attacking the
housing around here.
Like I said, I think the one thing you've got to really look at is infrastructure, right? We've got to get developers in here, we've got to get housing in here. But really what we have to do as a city is, look at Hobbs. Hobbs is a great example. Hobbs really grew smart, they grew well because they had a plan. I don't think we have a plan right now. I know some things come to us. I know of a project that we just lost to Carlsbad that was a massive project because we didn't respond in time. That would have helped us a lot, that project. But we've got to have a plan. When that developer walks in the door, here are some site selections. You want to build what? Oh, okay, look, we've got some here. We'll connect you with this group. Let's get it going. And then there's incentives you can do. That's where the city keeps saying anti-donation. They're wrong. They're 100% wrong. There are some incentives because the other cities around us have used them and used them aggressively, and they're developed while we're not. People say, well, why aren't you building houses in Artesia? Where do you want me to build them? I'd love to build another house right today. Where? The size of houses that I'm needing to build here, you don't have a ton of lots available for it. We've got to have developers, we've got to be aggressive with them, and we've got to be ready to help them do business, and I don't think we are right now.
Well, that's just not housing, that's also affordable housing.
Yeah, that's across the board. It's apartments, it's, there's a lot of ideas you can throw at them. I mean, we were going to develop out here. A while back, I had a group that was interested. They were looking at houses. They were looking at townhomes. Why are townhomes important? Well, that's the first house I could afford because that's all I could afford when I moved to Denver, right? Was a townhome. It was a great deal for families that are just started. I mean, there's a lot of ways to attack it. You just got to get developers. Right now, we don't have developers engaged in the conversation to start the conversation.
What is the answer to affordable housing? I'm just kind of curious. Is it we get subsidies and and get this funding to go build this deal that we subsidize for people, or is it let's get more supply to drive overall prices back down?
I really think it's a supply thing. If you look at our town, you don't have a huge supply chain right now, and that's what I was saying. If we could get, even if they're at that 280, 300 mark, right, and someone said, we can't all afford that, and I totally understand that.
Yeah, but those people are moving out of the...
But they're moving out. So all of a sudden you create a market within itself. It's economy, right? You create something that somebody wants. They're leaving something behind possibly that someone else might want, or they're downsizing so someone might get a bigger house. I mean, you see it all the time. Lubbock's housing market's incredible. If you look over there, Waco's got an incredible house. Texas has an incredible housing market right now in general. And you look, my grandparents left almost a 4,000 and something square foot house. Well, there are two little old people that didn't want to deal with it. They moved into a garden home. The whole area is garden homes, and they're all older folks. They didn't quite want to go into a home, but they wanted to downsize. They're high-end, nice stuff. But that left the big house for someone else to buy. They were able to move into a smaller house. There's just economy being created, and I think that's what we have to do. Even apartments. I mean, a lot of folks don't even want to buy a house. They want to live in an apartment. Fine. Let's create that. If you look at Waco, I know my daughter goes there. She loves the college. Waco's a dump. But they're really, really working hard to fix their problems. They've seen it, they understand what they are, and they're working hard to correct it. And I think they're doing a good job of it. They're creating houses for college kids. Look at what Lubbock did in the Overton area. That area used to be pretty rough. Now look at it, it's beautiful. They've created places for college kids to live. I'm sure professors live in there, and that frees other things
Then
up.
when Chip and Joanna did so well, they had a lot to work with.
They have a lot. They still have a lot to work.
If
It's
you've
weird.
ever been to Waco, I was actually born just 20 miles outside of Waco
Yeah.
and go back over there a lot, where my dad's family's from. And when you talk about it, yeah.
Yeah,
It
Chip and
amazes
Joanna.
me that Baylor is in Waco. Like,
Yeah.
when you know Baylor, it's like my mom went to Baylor, all of my aunts and uncles went to Baylor, like, when you know what Baylor is and kind of the reputation of Baylor, and then you go to where Baylor is at, you're like, how does this university sit in this town? Like,
It's so
not
weird.
work.
Like the last house we rented, we go down there to see my daughter all the time, and so it's this beautiful remodeled house, the Chip and Joanna house. Go figure. But it's an Airbnb. Right next door, she says, "Hey, when you park your car, be real careful where you park it, because next door is the drug house, and the other side is the homeless guys." And that was true. You look next door, looked like a drug house, and the other one had sheets pitched over trees, because that's where the homeless people were sleeping. So they're a weird market. But the point is, there's correction, and now you're seeing lofts are becoming huge. There's a lot of things you can do to really help create.
So you said a key to that was infrastructure and whatnot, you get developers. So where's the bottleneck in this community that we don't Just the supply has always been constrained. What do you see the bottleneck?
I really think
Is it a particular area of the infrastructure?
No, I think it's the city. I think the city bottlenecks it because if you look at out there, Bullocks, and all those started developing, right? Well, every street they were developing was getting more and more expensive because the city wanted something different and bigger and everything else. So it costs more. What does that do? That drives your lot price up. Once your lot price is and they're already tiny lots, so you drive your lot price up. Now I'm paying more for my lot, and my lumber's up, and my this is up, and so now the houses are up. So it really slows things down. Whereas I think if we can help with infrastructure, and that's where my argument was with anti-donation. I don't see it as anti-donation. The city's job is to provide infrastructure. And the city will be paid back for that infrastructure because you're going to hook into it. Think of if you developed a big development, 100 acres, just take it. How many houses could you put on 100 acres? What does that do to city property tax? Without raising the taxes, it raises your property tax significantly because you take a blank piece of land and dump a bunch of houses on it. Now all of a sudden you have a lot more property tax to work with. That fixes a lot. That's what we were talking about with the police and fire. That's a reoccurring revenue because you can't fix some of our problems with one-time monies. They got to be reoccurring, so how do we create those? You start doing that, well, the city gets paid back
What about
tenfold.
incorporating certain areas that are really close to city limits that are technically not within? Would that be an easy fix?
You know, we've already got hundreds of acres within the city limit, big plots of land, and I think if we work with those folks, we could probably get them help to developing them. But no, I think that's what the Carlsbad's had to do because they've grown so much, they've started to incorporate a little more or they don't have an ETZ zone, but they've got La Herda and all that right outside of the city, but it's still creating. But my goodness, we've got a subdivision that's trying to go up just outside the city limits, but it's within that 3 miles. County's ready to go on it, but they're having a heck of a time with the city to get the city to stamp on it because they keep moving the target for them. Development should have already been started. County's ready to go. It's in our jurisdiction. But because it's in that little radius, the city does have say in it with zoning. So the city, unfortunately, has slowed that development down.
Where's that?
Savannah, if you go right past the country club on Ritchie, right up in there. Yeah. Great subdivision. Will be, I think. They've got a great plan.
Well, what I see a lot, and I can use Roseland Manor as an example. Grandpa owned it, refused forever to ever sell it. It took us forever to convince him, why are you letting a rundown building that's causing problems in the neighborhood that people are breaking into, it's an issue, why are you holding on to it so hard? What would be your approach to somebody like him who is very picky? I mean, and the reality is we have to be picky. You kind of talked about, bringing in wrong city managers and wrong county managers. You let the wrong people develop the wrong things.
Yeah.
You have now put a thorn in the middle of our town.
Well,
And I think that that's kind of been the old adage and the old mindset of Artesia, is being very careful of what does come in, who does come in, and what we are building. And I know that even when he finally, the people that he sold that lot to that built the Roseland Manor, he went all over the country with him and that company, looking at other facilities that they had built, touring them, looking at how they function, meeting with the people who were living in those facilities, because he was really concerned about bringing in lower income housing. Because that just has a coined phrase, and when that sold and that development started, the backlash, the phone calls that he received, the phone calls we received of how could you do this to our neighborhood? How could you allow this? We're gonna have druggies living across the street.
Yeah.
How do you combat that? I mean, I think that if there would have been more of a partnership with the town, with the community, to just kind of be more proactive in some of the issues that we already know are gonna be brought up, rather than reactive.
Mhm.
That's kind of something that we face on the school board too, is we know these problems are gonna be brought up. How do we get ahead of it?
Yeah, and I think that's that site selection I was talking about, right? You've got to work with the zoning committee, you've got to have site selection, so whatever project's thrown at you, you're not scrambling right then to find a spot. You kind of have some site selection, you have some ideas, this could go here, it might take a lot of work. I mean, look at Wendy's. I got hammered on Wendy's, right? I sold that piece of land to Wendy's. They were excited to come here. Those little houses around there were furious at me. And I said, well, y'all live on Main Street. That's where Wendy's is going to go. I'm really, really sorry. I didn't put Wendy's in on the hill. I put it on Main
He
Street.
says it wouldn't be.
So, there are certain places where you can just, and that can be as, you know, you deal with it on the board, we deal with it in the county. How could you do that? Well, that's, in the county, the answer is, well, do you want zoning? Well, no, zoning's horrible. Okay, well then how am I supposed to stop it? Well, you can't. Okay, there's our answer. I mean, I can fix
It's not
this,
the
but if
problem.
this is the solution, how do we do it? But it's communication. I mean, we joke, but it's a lot of communication. I mean, you've got to be, and you've got to understand where things are supposed to go. I mean, you don't want to put certain things in, because you're not developing smart. You want to be able to drive through your city, and that's why I used Waco's example. I don't know that they developed smart at one time, because there really is. There's beautiful homes, and then there's homeless shelters, and then, so it didn't make a whole lot of sense. Well, what were y'all thinking when you developed it? You're creating your own problems, whereas if you would develop it properly, you might not have ever had these problems, and you would still be moving in the right direction. So it's making sure you've got good site selection, good planning and zoning, and you make sure your zoning is correct. I mean, you want to make sure certain things are protected, because they need to be. Yes, sir.
It's, to me, one thing to talk about a healthy growth and have a nice growth, but what about the inside of the city?
Mm-hmm.
I know that when we would try to bring people here to convince them to come to work and live in Artesia, try to figure out a route to drive through Artesia to show them the town without going by all the trash. And the trash is worse now.
Exactly.
You know, you get a couple of cars jacked up, and somebody's going to work on them. You wait 6 months to a year, there'll be 5 more just sitting there with nothing happening except the weeds growing up around them. We can't just focus on outside. What about our inside?
Well, and
You know, it's sort of like making yourself better, except for inside of you. And what are we going to do, John? What are we
Well,
gonna do
and that's
about
it.
that?
I love
It's a mess.
You can't tell now because I haven't done a good job. I love to work out, right? What do you work out first? The core, because the core creates everything else. And that's kind of what you're describing. I mean, you're right. Drive around the town, and I do it all the time. I've got to go pick up new doctors that might come to town, and they want me to tour it. So where do I go? Well, there's spots I'm definitely not going to go because you're right. And these are some neighborhoods that 2 years ago, beautiful. Now you've got cars parked in there. And I'm not saying everything is wrong, but we've got to make sure, you know, I'm the only one, I think, out of this group that chose Artesia to live. And why did I choose Artesia? Because when I was little, and I know it sounds stupid, but we were chasing, 88 and 89, Cloudcroft had the best basketball team in the world. We beat everybody, even 4A schools. And so we would travel through Artesia all the time. And I can remember even as a kid, La Fonda was cool. They used to have a little water fountain in there. They don't anymore, but you remember the water. But driving there, I thought, this place has got it figured out. They're clean. They take pride in themselves. It's like a mini Lubbock. If you look at Lubbock, Lubbock's a lot of the same way. There's a lot of pride in what we put out there. And I'm afraid that's slipping quite a bit, quite significantly, actually. Because when I'm running the neighborhoods, you see it a lot more. And I think you're right. We've got to get way more aggressive. There's stuff on the books. I know y'all are trying to hire some folks out there to do code enforcement. We've got to get a lot more aggressive and actually, you know, we just passed an ordinance, which I'm an anti-ordinance guy for the most part, but we did in the county because the same problem. People are just dumping trash wherever they want. So we're having to make those fines stick and hurt so that they'll stop, and maybe we can send a message. I think it's time to start sending a message that, hey, it's not hard. We're not asking you to have a perfect house, but it needs to be cleaned up. We don't need weeds. We don't need... And I got a weed note once up on the hill, and it was just a few in my alley, and I thought, my gosh. So my argument, and the problem is I can't expect you to do it if I as a city aren't going to do it. So I went to where I jogged that door, it was right down Ritchie, took a picture of Ritchie where the weeds were over the sidewalk. And I said, I'll fix my 5 weeds when I can walk down this sidewalk. Because if I'm going to ask you as a resident to fix it, I as a city had better make sure I've already policed myself. And I don't think we're doing that at all. So it's got to be a double fix there.
And maybe there's some, elderly people in those neighborhoods that they just don't have the money to fix their fence. It's expensive to buy lumber or whatever. Is there a way to help them with that if there's a need? And there's a difference between I just don't want to clean up and I'm, not paying attention to other things in my life either, but maybe there's a partnership with helping them to be able to.
Yeah, you know, when we went to First Baptist, when I was there, we started a men's group, and we'd go around and fix them. There's a lot of churches, youth groups that I know Tim used to be really involved in that, and my kids would go fix that. So yeah, I don't know that the city can pay for a lot of that because I don't want tax dollars going to someone else's house necessarily. But I do think we can partner with some great groups and show need, and pair the two. Here's the need, here's the group, let's pair these two. Yeah, get some communication, dialogue, and start having real growth within it. I think that would be a huge part of it. And it teaches our youth service, and that's obviously important, I think.
And this was a conversation that I had all this last week. I feel like a lot of our community's fatigued. I feel like our students are fatigued. I feel like there's a disconnect. I feel like that we're just to the point that we're tired and we're run down, and it takes leadership, it takes the ability to reignite that fire, to make us say, hey, you know what, yeah, we want to stand up and fight, we want to say something, we want to be more active, we want to be more proactive, we want to be more engaged, we want to be more involved. And I think you just have to give people something to want to be involved in.
Yeah.
I think the wrestling tournament last week is a prime example. There's probably less than 10 people in this entire town that have ever seen a wrestling match. They've never been to a wrestling tournament. And we said, hey, come help us pack the Red Brick Gym. And one of our coaches was from Aztec. He works in the Oldville now here, but he used to coach in Aztec. He was a teacher in Aztec, and he laughed, and he was like, there's actually on the Artesia Wrestling Facebook page, there's a letter from him, because when we started talking about packing the Red Brick Gym for wrestling, he went, you don't get a crowd for wrestling. People do not come out to watch wrestling, especially a town that knows nothing about this sport, that doesn't even know it exists. You're not gonna pack that gym. By golly, we did.
Yeah.
And it's because this is Artesia.
Yeah.
And it's not because everybody in the stands and everybody that lined the walls and packed that place had a vested person on the mat. They had a vested town.
Yeah.
They're creating something to latch onto.
And that's what makes Artesia great. That's what's always made us great.
One of my biggest pet peeves about Artesia is, we made this our home 28 years ago. We put a lot of work into the places that we have in our home. And even city property is not cared for. Give you a prime example, the aquatic center. Beautiful facility. During COVID, it just seemed like it went to hell. The yard, that's how I feel. I drive by it daily, and I just don't understand how the city can let things, and I keep it all with, they don't have enough people, but yet, from what I understand, there's money there, So why are we not investing? You go downtown, you see trees are dying, shrubs are dying down our main street, and that all costs money to put up.
Yeah. No, and it's about the first impression, right? I mean, if you own a business, you get one first impression. Artesia gets one first impression. So we, to Mr. Yates' comment, we've got to fix everyone else's yard, but we've also got to fix our yard, and we're letting our yard.
But I've always been told that you can't do anything about anybody's yards unless it becomes a public hazard.
But when the whole neighborhood, like this is an example, Christmas time, my family came here the first time they've been back here in 5 years. But you go over there and it's pressure from the neighbors, from the neighbors, from the neighbors. I think that as a whole, when the whole starts to move, there's a level of expectance and there's a level of, for the lack of a better word, community pressure on each other to rise up and do better. Christmas decorations, I'm gonna get off that soapbox in a minute, but when your neighbor decorates and outdecorates you, or everybody in the neighborhood's decorated and yours isn't, you kind of feel pressured to hang Christmas decorations. Like, let's all be honest, let's be realistic. And you don't hang them, and your neighbor doesn't hang them, and only one person down there does. Good, I don't have to this year. Let's be honest, we do it. That's the way we function.
Well, that does happen.
That's the way we work.
Where I live, we fixed up our yard many years ago, and it kind of had a domino effect. Everybody's done that, and I think it could happen. There's a certain amount of pride that goes into that. And hard work, let's face it.
Yeah.
I'm out there taking weeds and doing stuff, and I'm not sitting down watching a game. Everybody has their priorities. But, you have so many homes, you'll have a nice, decent home, and here and then everybody else on your, it just looks like.
It's
It's trash,
pride.
it's sofas,
No, it is. It is a domino effect. It is a pride thing, and like I said, that's really one of the big draws to Artesia is it always was proud of itself. It was always clean. It always took care of itself, and I think we miss that quite a bit now. So, well, thank y'all for your time. I appreciate it. I think we went long, but I apologize. Hopefully, I don't have a whole lot more waiting. But if y'all have other questions, more questions, please fire away at me anytime.
Oh,
You been doing all right?
Yeah. Go ahead, Ben. After you got over round 2 of COVID,
I heard that. We just went to our first round, and I told Tanya, so 3 weeks ago we caught it.